My name is David Bicknell. I'm the editor of Government Computing, and I'm here with James Asser, who's government consultant for Blackberry, and we're here to discuss mobility in the public sector. James, welcome.
Thank you.
How important would you say it is to balance security and mobility?
Hugely so. As a government consultant, I have a lot of experience working with other police services across the UK and in Europe. And in my experience, what I've found actually is where the balance isn't got, the usability drops off. Officers don't use their technology, the investment doesn't show a clear return. So for instance, if it's too hard to use the technology, or it's too slow, or it doesn't replicate the consumer experience, then what we find is actually the technology isn't valued, isn't used, IT training costs are much more significant, and it isn't that user buy-in. And if you look at the consumer model of technology, it's very interesting. It kind of writes the kind of consumer-centric world. It's about making it right for the customer. We need to start seeing police officers and members of staff as customers of the technology.
Is it fair to say that their reaction to the usability is immediate? Can you learn to use the sort of technology from a sort of police other perspective, or is it their attitude the same as a consumer is, I don't like this?
They're consumers. Yeah. In one pocket they will have their high-end smartphone, in their pocket they'll have some technology that doesn't compete. Like any consumer, if it doesn't, then you end up being driven to the other one. It actually creates security risks because people try and circumvent the security you've invested millions in doing. Because ultimately, if they can't get an email in a format they want, or they can't have a conversation on a technology they like, what they'll do is they'll tend to use their own private devices to do corporate work. That's when the huge risk becomes.
It's almost the lowest common denominator. I need to get this done, so I'll find a way of doing it.
Yes, often with best interests at heart. It isn't around cheating the system, it's about getting the job done. But of course, if you spend millions on doing security and you find out that your staff are circumventing it, actually it's quite frustrating. So you do need to replicate that consumer experience.
So how can technology change service delivery? What's sort of Blackberry's thinking on this?
It's interesting. I've seen many forces in the UK. What they've done is they've replicated what was possible 20 years ago. They've created forms and digital forms, but actually what they haven't done is re-engineered the service, and there are great opportunities of doing that. There are a number of examples of that. Location awareness. Your smartphone now in your pocket, basically, if you turn all the services on, will allow you to do some phenomenal things. It knows where you are. It knows what you're doing. So when you take that technology and you apply it to a policing context, what you can start to do is, for instance, you can use intelligence intelligently. There is so much information out in the sphere that we operate in. What you can do, of course, is start to hone it down, make it more relevant to where you are, what you're doing at that time. The kind of Google Glasses kind of thing, looking down a street and being able to contextualise what you see. And that's the kind of challenge, and it's some great advantages. It's about re-engineering what you're doing, not replicating it.
So from a police officer's point of view, this is revolutionising almost the way they go about discussing and tracking crime.
Indeed, the police service is like any other business. Its most powerful and most valuable asset is knowledge. It's how do you make that knowledge flow across the organisation? How do you make sure that the knowledge is secured but also has some value? So that's what this kind of mobile technology can do. It can make sure that we can have those real-time discussions, and it's very valuable to the police service to be able to do that. Information is only valuable if it's acted upon, and it's only valuable when it's real time. So it's around making some decisions at crime scenes and be able to push that in real time back to key commanders or back to custody centres, whatever it might be. That's the value of knowledge.
And things like integration, how important is a word like integration in terms of delivering mobility in the public sector?
Another word for it, interoperability. It's key to the police service because ultimately many of the incidents they attend will be part of a partnership. It may well involve the fire service or the police or the local health service. So it's around making sure that the information that's gathered during that event is shared in real time, and some of the key decision makers are often not in the police service. They may well be in local healthcare, particularly around missing children. The childcare responsibility lies with the council. It's around making sure that they're involved at the very onset of the investigation rather than at the end of it.
So in your opinion, what really makes a good mobile deployment?
It's around security and confidence in that. And it is balancing that kind of usability argument. You look at consumer applications and you see how they're built, how they're deployed, that kind of self-service principles. If you pick up a smartphone and there's 2 or 3 applications on it, you have less value than there's 10 or 15. So it's recognising that officers, that staff are just consumers. If you want them to use your technology, it has to replicate the consumer experience. if you regulate it so much that its only purpose is email, then actually the value is driven down. It's about making sure you get as much value as you can out of the single piece of technology. And I think that's where Blackberry have done very well. If you look at some of the things they're doing around how you can use the smartphone replacing the tablet, replacing the desktop, why have three pieces of technology? I'm always kind of perplexed why we have £300 phones sitting on desktops when nobody's in the room, yet everybody has a smartphone. So the technology around your location awareness is it should recognise when you come back in the office, and it should be able to use that technology to take over your phone and provide you that service. Because ultimately a ringing phone unanswered is a very frustrating experience for a customer. It's about making sure we use the technology to get as much value as we can out of it.
James, thanks very much.